The gala hall shimmered with luxury as Logan Pierce stood confidently at the podium, his speech poised to secure the future of his empire. Suddenly, alarms blared and lights flickered violently. Julia Cross gasped, clutching her chest as the massive digital screen behind Logan turned crimson. Mark Reynolds shouted over the chaos, "The feeds are compromised." "Logan!" Cameron Holt surged through the panicked crowd, grabbing Logan's arm and growling, "We need to move now before they corner you." Investors screamed as security guards scrambled to control the exits. A breaking news alert flashed across the screen, announcing the company's collapse lived to the world. Julia yelled, her voice sharp and trembling, "It's everywhere, Logan. We've lost everything." Logan scanned the crowd, realizing every familiar face might now be an enemy, and for the first time, true fear crept into his heart. Logan stumbled down a dim corridor with Cameron close behind, the roar of the gala fading to a muffled hum. Julia caught up, her voice sharp and shaking as she said, "We've lost every feed, Logan." Mark appeared, sweat dripping, his tie loosened as he panted. "Media outlets are live streaming the implosion." Logan growled, "Shut them down, now." Julia glared, her tone biting, "It's too late, they've taken everything from us." Cameron scanned the hallway, tense and alert, muttering, "We need to get you somewhere safe before they find you." Logan realized his empire wasn't just collapsing, it was already gone. In a shadowed boardroom, Logan stood at the head of the table, glaring at Julia and Mark. Julia crossed her arms tightly and hissed, "You didn't prepare for this, Logan." Mark slammed his fist down, snarling, "No one could have predicted this." Cameron lingered near the doorway, silently watching. Logan's voice dropped into a growl, "We don't have time for blame. Someone planned this." Julia leaned forward, trembling with fury, "Then find the traitor, because it's not me." Cameron finally spoke, low and grave, "We must assume everyone is compromised." The air turned heavy, the room reeking of mistrust. Logan stared at a towering wall of monitors broadcasting his downfall. Julia's hands shook as she said, "Every channel has it, Logan. We can't stop it." Mark paced in circles, muttering like a madman, "They smell blood." Cameron leaned in close, his voice urgent, "Your face is everywhere. There's no hiding now." Logan's voice cracked, heavy with despair. This was supposed to be our crowning moment. Julia's eyes narrowed, cold as ice. "No, Logan. This is the end of your reign." Outside, reporters gathered like vultures, flashbulbs bursting like gunfire. As dawn broke, Logan stood on the rooftop, gazing over the city painted in pale orange light. His phone buzzed endlessly, unanswered. Julia had left silently, Cameron disappeared into the night, and Mark vanished without a trace. Logan whispered, voice raw, "It's all gone." The distant wail of sirens carried on the wind as he stared at the skyline. The empire he built was now nothing but scraps for others to devour. Closing his eyes, Logan took a deep breath, knowing the next move he made would determine whether he rose again or vanished forever. In a towering skyscraper office, Vincent Kane watched the news reports with a cold smile, savoring Logan Pierce's public humiliation. Julia Cross paced nervously nearby, whispering, "Hell retaliate." Vincent calmly replied, "He's too busy running from the fire." Cameron Holt stormed in, his tone sharp, "Logan needs allies, and you're circling like a shark." Vincent chuckled darkly, "This is business, Cameron, not charity." Julia clenched her fists and hissed, "You're exploiting his downfall." Vincent leaned forward, his voice low and menacing, "I'm seizing an opportunity he was too weak to hold." Outside the window, the city glimmered like a battlefield ready for conquest. Logan Pierce sat in a dim safe house, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. Julia Cross sat opposite him, her voice trembling, "We can't fight them alone, Logan." Cameron Holt leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and muttered, "Every ally has a price." Logan exhaled sharply, "We have to take that risk." Julia's eyes shimmered with conflict as she said, "I've reached out to someone, but they don't trust you." Logan's jaw tightened, his tone fierce, "Then make them trust me." Cameron glanced toward the door, tense, "If Vincent Kane finds us before we secure this alliance, it's over." Outside, Distant sirens wailed like an omen of coming war. In a sleek penthouse cloaked in darkness, Evelyn Shaw spoke into a concealed phone, her voice smooth as silk. "Move the funds quietly," she instructed. Logan Pierce's downfall played silently on a massive wall screen behind her. Vincent Kane appeared in a video feed, smirking as he said, "Our plan moves faster than expected." Evelyn's lips curved into a subtle smile. "Logan will never see me coming." Julia Cross' voice cut through from a speaker, trembling. "You're the one pulling the strings." Evelyn chuckled softly. "And you were naive to think you were ever free of my reach." Outside, a storm gathered over the city like a warning. In the heart of Logan's abandoned headquarters, Cameron Holt scanned through shredded documents and smashed equipment. Julia Cross knelt beside a ruined server, whispering, "This wasn't random." Logan Pierce walked slowly through the wreckage, his voice low and bitter. Someone inside helped them. Cameron slammed a broken hard drive onto the table, growling. This was deliberate sabotage. Julia's eyes darted nervously. "What if it's someone we trust?" Logan's gaze hardened. "Then they'll regret betraying me." The silence hung heavy, broken only by the soft hum of failing emergency lights. Under a flickering street lamp in an abandoned industrial district, Logan Pierce met Evelyn Shaw for the first time. Julia Cross stood slightly behind him, whispering, "We can't trust her." Evelyn's voice was silky and calm as she said, "Trust isn't required, only results." Logan clenched his fists, replying, "You want power, I need survival. That's the deal." Evelyn smirked, her tone sharp. "Then we both get what we want." Cameron Holt watched silently from the shadows, muttering to himself, "This is a dangerous game." Logan knew this alliance could either save him or destroy him completely. Logan Pierce paced the darkened safe house, his voice low and strained as he said, "There's someone feeding them our every move." Julia Cross sat at the edge of the table, trembling as she whispered, "It can't be one of us." Cameron Holt crossed his arms, his tone sharp. "The evidence says otherwise." Mark Reynolds burst in, breathless and wild-eyed. "Vincent Kane is closing in." Someone tipped him off. Logan slammed his fist on the table, roaring, "I want names." Julia's eyes flicked toward Cameron before she quickly looked away. Silence settled like a heavy weight, suspicion thick in the stale air as loyalties began to fray. Logan Pierce stood over Mark Reynolds in a private corner office, his voice cold as ice. "Tell me why Vincent Kane knew about our safe house," Logan demanded. Mark shook his head, sweat rolling down his face. "I swear, it wasn't me." Julia Cross stood near the doorway, arms crossed, and said bitterly, "Your timing is too perfect to be innocent, Mark." Cameron Holt paced like a predator, adding, "If you're lying, you've doomed us all." Mark's voice cracked. "You don't understand, I was trying to protect the company." Logan's glare deepened, realizing protection might have turned into betrayal. In a cluttered backroom filled with discarded files, Natalie Price sat slumped in a chair, her eyes hollow. Logan Pierce leaned down, his tone urgent. "Tell me who's been feeding information to Vincent Kane." Natalie laughed bitterly, replying, "You built this empire on broken promises, Logan." Julia Cross stepped forward, pleading, "Natalie, we need the truth to stop this." Natalie's voice hardened. "Why should I save the people who ruined me?" Cameron Holt slammed his hand against the wall, snarling, "Because if you don't, we all go down." Natalie finally whispered, "You're looking for a traitor. You should start inside your own circle." The boardroom buzzed with tension as Logan Pierce entered, every executive watching him like wolves ready to pounce. Julia Cross stood at his side, whispering, "They're divided, but they smell weakness." Vincent Kane sat smugly at the far end, smirking as he said, "Logan, it's time you stepped aside." Mark Reynolds looked between them nervously, his voice faltering, "We need unity, not war." Cameron Holt slammed a file onto the table, snarling, "Vincent orchestrated this chaos." Vincent laughed coldly, and Logan let it happen. The room erupted in shouts as alliances crumbled in a storm of accusations. Logan Pierce walked alone through a dim hallway, his footsteps echoing like distant drums. Julia Cross appeared from the shadows, her voice trembling. "Logan, wait." Before he could respond, Cameron Holt stepped out behind him, tense and silent. Suddenly, Mark Reynolds emerged with a gun, his hands shaking. "I didn't want it to end like this," Mark stammered. Logan's eyes widened. "You betrayed me." Julia screamed, "Mark, don't do this." Mark's face twisted with rage. "You left me no choice." The hallway filled with the sound of a single gunshot, sealing their shattered alliance in blood. Logan Pierce bolted through the shattered headquarters, his breath ragged as alarms wailed behind him. Cameron Holt shouted, "Left, Logan, now!" Julia Cross sprinted beside them, clutching her side and gasping, "They're closing in." Bullets cracked through glass as Vincent Kane's mercenaries stormed the upper floors. Logan leapt over debris, growling, "We can't let them take us alive." Cameron slammed open a side door, yelling, "Move!" Julia stumbled but kept pace, fear and fury flashing in her eyes. Behind them, voices echoed, growing louder, relentless. As they burst into the cold night, Logan realized this was no longer a battle for power. It was a fight for survival. Logan Pierce stumbled into a narrow back alley, gulping cold air as rain pelted down. Julia Cross leaned against a brick wall, clutching her side, whispering, "I've never been this far from the tower." Cameron Holt scanned the street, muttering, "We're exposed here." Logan gritted his teeth, his voice rough, "We hide among the ones we've ignored." A homeless man stared as they passed, his silent gaze like judgment. Julia wiped her face, anger cutting through fear. Cameron hissed, "They'll be hunting every street, every shadow." Logan looked at the distant skyline, whispering, "Let them hunt. We'll disappear where they'd never dare to look." In a dim underground bar, Logan Pierce sat across from Richard Cole, a former titan of the industry now cloaked in shadows. Richard's voice rasped, "You think ambition will save you?" Julia Cross glared at him, snapping, "We don't need lectures, we need solutions." Cameron Holt stayed silent, watching carefully. Richard smirked bitterly. "I once thought power was enough. It wasn't." Logan leaned forward, his tone defiant. "Then tell me how to survive this war." Richard's eyes gleamed with old pain. "You must sacrifice everything you love," he said, his words heavy like chains. Julia turned away, unable to meet Logan's stare. Logan Pierce knelt over a crate of unmarked cash and weapons, his hands shaking as he loaded a pistol. Julia Cross paced, her voice sharp. "This isn't who we are, Logan." Cameron Holt snapped back, "It's who we have to be to survive." Logan's voice thundered, "If we fight clean, we die." Julia stopped, tears in her eyes as she whispered, "Then what's left of us after this?" Cameron slammed a magazine into his weapon, saying coldly, "Winning is what's left." Logan stared at both of them, knowing this was the line they couldn't uncross, then nodded grimly. As night deepened, Logan Pierce, Julia Cross, and Cameron Holt huddled in a hidden safe house deep beneath the city. Julia whispered, "It feels too quiet." Cameron frowned, scanning the shadows, "Because someone's watching." Logan's jaw tightened as he checked his weapon. Suddenly, a faint creak echoed from the far corner. Julia gasped, "We're not alone." Cameron raised his gun, moving silently toward the sound. A shadow shifted, revealing a figure slipping away through a hidden passage. Logan growled, "We've been found." Julia's fear turned to fury. "There's a spy among us," she hissed, her voice breaking. Logan Pierce sat alone in the dim safe house, his head bowed when the door creaked open. Julia Cross sprang to her feet, ready to fight, but froze as David Grant stepped inside. David's voice was calm but firm. "Logan, I never stopped believing in you." Cameron Holt narrowed his eyes, suspicious. "Where have you been all this time, David?" he demanded. David sighed heavily. "I've been gathering allies, but they're scared to show their faces." Julia's eyes filled with hope as she whispered, "We're not alone then." Logan rose slowly, his tone resolute. "If we stand together, we can fight back." The room filled with a fragile spark of defiance. In a shadowy alley, Cameron Holt crouched beside a discarded briefcase marked with Vincent Kane's company seal. He slipped up, Cameron muttered with a sharp grin. Julia Cross knelt beside him, inspecting papers inside. "These are shipment records," she said breathlessly. Logan Pierce's eyes burned with new resolve. "This is where we strike." David Grant glanced around nervously and warned, "If we act too quickly, they'll see us coming." Logan clenched his fists, replying, "If we wait, they'll bury us." Julia nodded, determination hardening her voice. "We hit them before they recover." The briefcase became a symbol of their first true advantage. Inside a crowded warehouse filled with frightened employees, Logan Pierce stood before a young executive named Sarah Mills. "They think you're weak," Logan said, his voice carrying through the room. Sarah trembled, replying, "I was just a junior analyst, Logan." Julia Cross stepped forward, encouraging, "You have power they can't see yet." Cameron Holt added, "We need someone on the inside." Sarah straightened her shoulders, eyes narrowing with resolve. "Then I'll be the weapon they never expected," she declared. David Grant smiled faintly, whispering, "The underdog rises." The crowd's whispers swelled into a low hum of defiance. On a rooftop overlooking Vincent Kane's heavily guarded facility, Logan Pierce crouched beside Cameron Holt, scanning through binoculars. Julia Cross whispered, "Are we ready for this?" David Grant adjusted a radio, replying, "We're outnumbered, but not outsmarted." Sarah Mills stood nervously behind them, clutching a laptop. Cameron's voice was cold and precise. "We breach the north side while Sarah hacks their system." Logan nodded sharply. "Tonight, Vincent learns fear." Julia touched Logan's arm, murmuring, "Just come back alive." As the team prepared to strike, storm clouds gathered, promising chaos. The facility burned behind them as Logan Pierce stood amid smoke and ash. Julia Cross limped forward, tears streaking her face. "We did it," she whispered. Cameron Holt dropped his weapon, exhaustion etched into his features. "We survived," he muttered bitterly. Sarah Mills approached, holding a salvaged hard drive, her voice trembling. "The data's secure. But many didn't make it." David Grant stared at the flames, silent. Logan's eyes hardened as he said, "This was only one battle." Julia sobbed quietly, knowing their victory had cost more than it gave. The night was eerily silent, except for the crackle of burning ruins. Logan Pierce stood over a table, scattered with stolen documents, his hands trembling. Julia Cross read a report aloud, her voice unsteady. "These shipments never existed, Logan. They set us up." Cameron Holt slammed his fist on the table, snarling, "Vincent Kane played us perfectly." Sarah Mills typed frantically on her laptop, whispering, "No, there's another layer here. Someone else is pulling the strings." David Grant stepped back, unease flashing in his eyes. Logan's voice dropped to a whisper, "We've been fighting the wrong enemy." Silence filled the room as they realized their entire war had been manipulated from the shadows. In a towering office overlooking the city, Evelyn Shaw stood by the window, her silhouette framed against the skyline. Vincent Kane sat behind a massive desk, seething. "Logan still lives," he growled. Evelyn turned slowly, a sly smile playing on her lips. "He lives because I allow it," she said smoothly. Julia Cross' voice rang out from a speaker, shocked, "You were behind all of it." Evelyn laughed coldly. "You think Vincent is my enemy? He's my pawn." Vincent rose in anger, but Evelyn's glare froze him in place. "This game has always been mine," she whispered, her words chilling the room. Logan Pierce confronted Richard Cole in the dim bar where they first met. "I knew." Richard avoided Logan's gaze, muttering, "I told you to sacrifice everything." Logan slammed him against the wall, shouting, "You knew Evelyn Shaw was behind this." Julia Cross gasped, stepping between them. Cameron Holt's voice was filled with rage. "You've been protecting her." Richard's bitter laugh echoed, "I built this empire before Logan. Evelyn was my partner, and my ruin." Logan released him, stunned, whispering, "You let me walk into the same trap that destroyed you." Richard's eyes filled with regret as he said, "I hoped you'd be strong enough to escape it." Julia Cross stumbled into the safe house with a wild look in her eyes, clutching her phone. "Logan," Vincent Kane struck back, she cried. Cameron Holt grabbed his rifle, growling, "Well, stop him." Suddenly, Sarah Mills appeared from the shadows, her tone calm and unsettling. "No, Cameron, you'll do nothing." Logan's face twisted in confusion. "Sarah?" he demanded. Sarah smirked coldly. "You all underestimated me. I've been Evelyn Shaw's spy since the beginning." David Grant lunged at her, but she raised a gun, stopping him cold. Julia whispered, devastated, "You destroyed everything." Sarah's voice was ice. "I built my future." Rain hammered the rooftop as Logan Pierce faced Evelyn Shaw, the city lights gleaming below. "Why?" Logan shouted, his voice hoarse with fury. Evelyn stepped closer, smiling faintly. "I needed chaos, Logan, and you gave it to me." Julia Cross, battered and trembling, cried out, "You used us all." Evelyn's laugh cut through the storm. "I built you up so I could destroy you before the world's eyes." Sarah Mills emerged from behind Evelyn, standing proudly at her side. Cameron Holt aimed his weapon, yelling, "It ends tonight." Evelyn raised her hand calmly, whispering, "No, Cameron. Tonight it truly begins." Lightning split the sky as the trap finally closed around them. Rain lashed against the rooftop as Logan Pierce faced Evelyn Shaw under the glow of the city lights. Julia Cross stood weakly at his side, her voice trembling. "Logan, don't do this." Cameron Holt circled behind Evelyn, rifle raised. Sarah Mills smirked coldly, standing beside Evelyn like a loyal shadow. Evelyn's voice cut through the storm, calm and commanding, "You've fought to survive, Logan, but you've already lost." Logan roared, charging forward as chaos erupted. Julia screamed his name while Cameron opened fire. The rooftop became a battlefield where every secret and betrayal came crashing together in a storm of violence. Explosions ripped through the building beneath them, shaking the rooftop violently. Logan Pierce grabbed Julia Cross, pulling her away from the crumbling edge. Cameron Holt shouted, "The structure's failing." Sarah Mills fired wildly, forcing Cameron to dive for cover. Evelyn Shaw laughed through the chaos, shouting, "Everything burns, Logan." Logan's face twisted with rage as he yelled, "Not this time." The roof cracked open, sending debris flying as water and fire clashed in a spectacular collision. Julia clung to Logan, tears mixing with rain as the empire he built collapsed into ash and ruin beneath their feet. As flames consumed the structure, Logan Pierce faced a terrible choice. Cameron Holt was trapped under debris, shouting, "Go, Logan, save yourself." Julia Cross sobbed, "We can't leave him." Evelyn Shaw, wounded but smiling, hissed, "Choose, Logan, power or loyalty." Sarah Mills aimed her gun at Julia, taunting, "You can't save everyone." Logan's eyes burned with anguish as he whispered, "I won't let her win." With a primal roar, he lunged forward, knocking Sarah aside, then heaved the debris off Cameron. Julia screamed as Evelyn disappeared into the smoke, leaving only her laughter behind. The storm finally quieted, leaving a haunting silence, broken only by distant sirens. Logan Pierce stood on the edge of the ruined rooftop, staring down at the smoldering wreckage of his empire. Julia Cross sat beside Cameron Holt, tending to his wounds, her face pale with exhaustion. David Grant arrived, wide-eyed at the devastation. "Is it over?" he asked quietly. Logan didn't answer, his hands shaking. Julia whispered, "Evelyn's gone, but so is everything we fought for." Cameron groaned, his voice hoarse, "We're still alive. That has to count for something." Logan turned away, unable to face them, burdened by the cost of survival. Logan Pierce stood alone as the sun rose, casting a fragile light across the broken city. Julia Cross called out softly behind him, but he didn't turn. Cameron Holt and David Grant watched silently, knowing this was his burden to bear. Logan whispered to himself, "Victory means nothing if you lose your soul." He dropped a blood-stained company emblem into the ruins below and walked away slowly. Behind him, a figure emerged from the shadows, Evelyn Shaw, alive and smiling faintly. The screen faded to black as her chilling laughter echoed, leaving the war unfinished.